emailing the group, I didn't realize the Open Meetings Act applies to email as well. Makes sense, but those are the things we kind of learn as we go. So yeah, I just felt that what I'd like to see, or what I would suggest maybe that we do with the Planning Commission seat, is to really look at who's already on the Planning Commission, find out what their strengths and weaknesses are, maybe their areas of expertise, and then think about, what is it we're looking for in that Planning Commission seat that would help fill some of those holes. I know we get, a lot of it is up to whoever applies, and that's great, but I just feel like maybe we could be doing a little bit more around recruiting a little bit, and just having an eye, especially going into the master planning process, really having an eye for what do we need in our Planning Commission, rather than just relying on who might happen to step forward. I also feel like we didn't, not that we didn't, but it felt really rushed and there wasn't maybe enough time to communicate well with people. If there were a job description, that would be easier. I know I talked to a few people and they were like, well, what does it involve? What's the time commitment? And it was just a little bit difficult for me to explain, like, what is a planning commission? And then, so yeah, just having a little bit more preparation around that, I felt like, especially if we're going to have term limits, which we do now, going forward, what does that look like, keeping that? There's always going to be people like me who are new to the commission who don't really, who can use that information. So that's kind of where that was coming from, and I hope that we can extend the deadline and maybe get a little bit more intentional about that. So,
commissioners' feedback, maybe I'll ask our planning ZBA folks that have been around a little while, any feedback or input from that?
Yeah, I would be inclined as well to extend the deadline. I think there is value to making sure that we are more thorough in presenting the information to folks and trying to get more people, the application process open to more people. I feel like we really hit a limited pool of folks the way that we went out. So maybe being more aggressive and trying to get a bigger pool of applicants, because I would really like to see who is out there looking to get involved, because I get the sense that there are a lot more people than the two that applied. Not that they aren't worthy candidates, but just trying to expand that pool and see if we can't get a better feel for what's out there in terms of people looking for that opportunity.
I like the idea of having a job description and maybe the time parameters or commitment that's involved with that position. That kind of tells the people if they feel that they can fulfill that role, or if they have the skill set that they can support the role or the jobs at hand. So maybe in the future when we have an opening, a job description would be kind of nice so that they know what's expected of them.
I'd like to, if you put out you're looking for people, you got people apply, someone should be put in that position. But if you want a job description, or it's up to us to change our application.
Good point.
And it's not up to them. They fill out the application and they fulfilled their duties. And I feel that you have two people that are interested. If we got two seats, then we should fill them. If some reason if we have one, we should at least fill that one. And moving forward, you can't put the cart in front of the horse, is the way I look at it. So I think we need to fulfill the job now and change our applications prior to putting them out there, requesting folks for any positions.
Fair enough.
I think it's also important to remember that every time we get new members onto the board, it's a whole learning process. It's not something that happens overnight that you learn what you have to do or what your role is. Rather, as having someone that has previous experience, rather on ZBA or Planning Commission, and then switching between the boards or vice versa, it allows them to then carry over what they learned from the previous board to apply it then to the other board. So like, I was able to do that through Planning Commission to ZBA, just through the switch over the last couple of weeks. And then it was helpful to know the process through Planning Commission to then apply that same process that would be used in ZBA.
Okay, good, thank you.
How many positions do we actually have open right now?
One currently.
One currently.
Correct.
Okay, so we are possibly anticipating another, and so could we put this process in place then for the next opening?
Well, I think without a doubt, yeah, we
I
could
mean, so we
definitely
can
do that.
improve on this and
Right.
decide how we want to do it and be consistent in the future then. So we have the correct information or more information and we're able to recruit personally better. We know what we're asking people and.
No, it's a great point, actually. All are. I think the one thing is we're in the process right now of redefining a number of committees. Maybe to Dan's analogy, the cart before the horse, it's almost of getting, looking back into the process, and what does the process look like? As we're appointing people to these committees, not just planning, not just CBA, so maybe a time for a little bit of a refresh there. So we can take that as for all of the committees as a separate item and look at that. But from my 2 cents, there are two, to Dan's point, I agree with him in that there are two candidates with years of background. We just went through the process with Scott Funk with the third ward spot. I had him pretty high on my list as far as the commissioner spot and potentially for that, and felt myself like he was a very worthy candidate of it. And if we had to pick between the two, that was hands down my first choice there. So that's my 2 cents. So I guess with that, with the group here, kind of going around here, what would we want to do from a course of action? Because I'm hearing a little bit of mixed. Do we feel have enough right now with the one opening that we can make a decision on that, or are we going to repost? And I think we should at that point actually allow those two openings, or those. If that were the case, we should allow the two applicants already to be considered for that next spot if we go that route. That I'm not sure what the timeline would be on that at this point. I think from a posting standpoint. So I'll look for feedback from the commissioners.
My gut reaction is that I would still rather see the process extended. That being said, if the commission is inclined to move forward, I get it. I don't have a problem with it. I think both candidates would be perfectly fine. I think advancing Scott probably makes a lot of sense just because much like yourself, I did have him very high on my list for that third ward position on the commission, and I think that he would do a really good job. It would be interesting for myself to have that experience serving with him on planning. I think he would do a good job, especially in the more legal terms that we work on with all of the ordinance stuff that we're doing, updating those parts of it. So I feel comfortable either way, but
okay, understood.
I'd really prefer to extend the deadline. I don't think it's a disservice to the two candidates. They'll still be considered. It's not like we're changing the position in any way. It's just doing maybe a little bit better job of communicating so that we can draw from a little bit wider pool. And like I said, it'd be nice to be able to get a little bit, we talk a lot about increasing citizen engagement and our communication and things like that. So I think this is a good opportunity to do that without, running any real risk of anything. I don't think it would hurt the process, the planning commission, to do that. Okay. And like I said, they would certainly be considered. I'm not suggesting we wipe the slate, so just maybe add more.
Fair enough. Okay.
I guess I could go either way. I do feel a little bit like it's changing the rules after you start the game a little bit. It doesn't, I don't know. I wish we were not in the timeline that we're at. I wish we had done this differently from the start, I guess. I can go either way, but I guess I would probably lean towards let's figure out how we want to do this better in the future and do it consistently better for all communities.
Okay. I actually have you 50-50 for right now. I might have to come back this way in a minute. All right. Commissioners to the left.
I'm more inclined with going with our candidates that we have currently just because of the whole thing of changing the process after the fact that they have already applied and knew the process.
Okay.
I'm kind of on the fence like Steve, 50/50. Only because, we did have the due date out there, and the due date was May 31st. It came and went. We tried to vet out some people, and unfortunately, we had some strong considerations, but they didn't meet the deadline, and I guess I just don't want to set a precedent that we put a deadline out there and then we say, oh, yeah, well, we're going to change it now. I don't want us to feel like we, in full transparency, that we're a little wishy-washy. I'm on the fence. I think that I'm okay if we extend it, but I personally would rather see us maybe hold firm and then going forward, make sure that we do more of the considerations for the other applicants for any new positions. And it sounds like there might be some upcoming positions in the near future that we can implement this on, but that's just my take.
I would like to appoint one of the two that applied. Also, when we go to move forward, I'd like to see, and it's been a practice, but I don't think it's something that's been in writing, but to have people on the planning commission from different wards. So each ward has representation. So I know we try to do it that way, but, so if we're going to advertise, and so we should let the people know out front, if you're living in third ward and we're short first ward members, your odds are, you could do very well, but, we need representation from all parts of the city.
Sure.
So,
No, fair statement.
but I would like to see one of the two now, and I can totally understand change in the future. It's going to happen.
So I have myself listed as now as well, understanding that we have those potential needs in the future. So I have 3 now, 1 to extend it, and actually technically the deadline's already closed. So that did not get changed. We'd reopen it. So that's 3 and 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the 50/50s. I'm actually going to make you make a decision because we have to do something with this. And I don't want to put words in people's mouths to read something into this. I'm not. So we right now have 3 of the 7 here that have said they'd like to make the decision now. 1 to reopen, and then 3 50/50. So I'm going to come back to my right and put people in that uncomfortable spot of we have to make decisions sometimes. So
Yeah, put to a vote, I would personally choose to extend, but again, I'm
Okay.
totally supportive of you guys if we choose to move the other way.
okay. So right now for reopen. So okay. All right. So that takes 1 off. That would be you.
I guess I'm inclined to agree with what Roxanne said, that I would like us to stick with the deadline that we established and went with, rather than, I think it does make us look a little, wishy-washy, I guess, as she stated,
Okay.
to make a change after the fact.
Okay. All right. So that's 4, but I'm going to come back this way because Rox, I had you at 50/50. Yes.
Well, I better stick with my words, so I'm going to say I'll go with the deadline.
Okay.
But I do think we need to put a more robust process in place going forward. My vote was for transparency only.
Okay, so noted. All right, so we have 5 for the deadline, the 2 candidates that we have. We have 2 for reopening, so it appears that we will work with the 2 candidates that we have. And Commissioner Kent, your comment about the ward piece is so noted, and I think I just very, very recently had given something to the clerk's office. We're going to get more of a breakdown of wards and some information for me from a contact standpoint, I think, yes.
On that, I can say that for the planning commission right now, where we're really hurting is second ward representation.
Okay.
We've got, I think, 1 member who's in second ward
Okay.
at this point, so that's for future consideration somewhere where we may look to try to bring in some more involvement.
Okay, so noted then. Okay, so we're at 5-2 then. As far as the two candidates, I'll come to my left at this point. And has everybody had the opportunity to look at the packets of the two applicants at this point to make decisions? So I'm going to come left. Commissioner Ken, I'm going to start with you, if that's all right.
They're both very good candidates, and, you know, I'm old school and so is Al, you know, but I haven't heard his name tonight, so I am, you know, I feel either one of them would be a good candidate, so I'm going to leave it at that, and I'd like to hear others' comments.
Okay, so a 50-50 there for now, all right?
All right.
Mr. DeShane?
I have a tendency to think that Scott would do a good job because of his background and what he has to offer for the planning group.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with Roxanne.
Okay.
I had Scott as one of my top 4 to move forward with the interview process for the commission seat. So I think from the legal perspective, and that was one reason why I thought he would be a good addition in the commission position as well, is because of that legal perspective that can be valuable.
Okay.
So I would go with Scott.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree that with the legal background, I think Scott would make a good addition to the Planning Commission.
Well, I think obviously both would do really well. Al served for a long time and really did a good job, but I do think that, and now I put my ordinance committee hat on because now that I do a lot more with that, I think that I've come to value having different perspectives. I sit in those meetings with Jeff Sluggett and the kind of legal perspective that we get there. And that's something that we've been pretty aggressive on this year, trying to take more stuff to ordinance, I think, and really take a deep dive into some of that information. And when it comes to planning, a lot of times I feel like there's a disconnect between how those two meetings flow. So I think that, I think Scott has something to add there.
Okay. And I would support and have nothing further to add on that end of it. So we have 6 in favor and 1 on the fence. It could go either way, so.
Kind of got my answer.
Okay. I try not to put words in people's mouths, so we're good there. So, all right. So from a procedural standpoint, can we have this as a walk-on for 7 o'clock
You can actually
tonight?
make a motion right now because this is a public meeting and part of a
Okay.
standalone meeting.
All right. So at this point, with what appears to be unanimous consent from the commission, we'd like to consider the appointment of Scott Funk to the Planning Commission. Look for a motion on that and approval.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Commissioner Groders,
I'll second.
second from Commissioner Heisinger. Any other discussion on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. Welcome, Scott. Thank you. I'll reach back out to you in the next 24 hours here, so you're welcome to join us the rest of the night if you want, so thank you. All right. Police Fire Subcommittee, next on the list, as I had shared with some of you, this was a committee that was established back, heck, I can't remember the date. I mean, this is a long, long time ago. This is when we had, for the newer commissioners, this was actually established at a time when our public safety department actually had police and fire under one umbrella. And we had a much different structure. We've since split that. The last time that this group met was 2016, but I even go back to the establishment, the reason that was established, and it was really from a governance and support of a collective committee at that point. With all of the committee cleanup stuff that we've been doing, and obviously it's where we still have some work to do yet from tonight. So as we continue to do that, this was on my housekeeping list. The group has not met again since 2016. There will not be a need for it going forward because it has no function or purpose because we're not a combined department anymore. So this is one that on our agenda later is the resolution to actually disband that one, dissolution of it. So open up for any public questions on it or comments.
I just feel the committee filled its requirements, and it's kind of like the job applications. It's time to change a few things.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I think that probably kind of rolls us into a little bit is the, we had 2 applicants for our fire chief then, and one of the discussions that Daryl, Shannon, and I were having initially was, what does this process look like? What do we bring back to the commission? Does this go to personnel? It definitely does not go to the police and fire subcommittee, but does it go to personnel first? And we thought it was best that we bring it to the entire commission and we do the interviews together collectively. And so what we're looking to do, we tentatively right now have next Monday for our time at the county at the dispatch center. And I hate to punt this one more time, but I believe we have a higher priority right now, given a retirement at the end of this month, and we have 2 very good internal candidates. So recommendation is we would do interviews Monday night for one at 5 o'clock to 5:45, and then the second would be 5:45 to 6:30. And I want to check with the commission to make sure availability is there the best that we can.
Commissioner Kent, you'll be absent, correct? Okay.
Okay.
I'm iffy on availability.
Okay. Thoughts? I'll turn to you. Okay. Okay. Open a suggestion. So 5 would be iffy.
Yeah.
I'm almost wondering if we could, we have DPW, Daryl, at 6:30.
Yeah, they're coming in to do their, DPW is scheduled to do their departmental report, and Mark has all his assistants coming in with them, but perhaps we could, delay that till 7 o'clock. But I hate to change the night on them because they've all got that
Yeah, understood.
set.
But I'm almost wondering if
Yeah.
what's the earliest you can? And I know you're challenged this month.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just had a conversation on this, so I know.
Probably 5:30. Probably 6 would be I could probably make 5:45. Yeah.
So Daryl, could we potentially,
DPW at 7:30?
I hate having them that late. I'm almost, I was wondering about DPW in the front end. Would they?
Yeah.
I was
do you
going to
think
say,
they
do we
would
want to just flip
DPW
that
at
schedule,
5?
then do
I
DPW
could
at
talk to
5?
Gary, they'd probably be happy to do it at 4 o'clock,
5.
4:30 or 5, and
Yeah.
then flip it around. 5.
So maybe.
You tell me,
5.
I'd just would like to keep them on that night if
Okay.
possible.
So
They
could
don't
we,
get slotted.
majority from the commission here, 5 o'clock for DPW? And then we'll start at 6 with the others, just give us a little bit of,
Yeah.
gives you just a buffer of time. And then Dan, we can catch up with, so we'll go 6 to 6:45 for one, and 6, I'd like just a little buffer in there, but I think we'll be okay. So yeah, we'll be okay at 6:45. 6:45 to 7:30. And then what I'd ask both Shannon and Daryl are going to develop the questions. This is a little bit, it's a little bit different than the commissioner or committee process in that this is an actually full-time employee of the city. So there are obviously we want to make sure that we're in compliance with HR with the questions we ask, we don't ask. So I've asked them to put that together, and they will share that with us. When we get, maybe it might be next Monday, because I think you have to put those together yet. Okay, so as soon as we have them, we'll be able to do that, so that's the plan. Questions on that?
Yeah, did they applied for the position?
Both of them did, yes.
So we'll be getting
Both.
application materials.
Don Munn and
to refer
Dave Pelton,
to.
yes, I'm sorry. So the application stuff just today. I also just got, literally as I was coming back from South Bend this afternoon, the survey results from the fire department. I've not had a chance to go through in detail with them yet, because I would not look at them while I'm driving, obviously. So So I have those, and we'll share those before I leave tonight.
Okay.
But those are the three, it was three very basic, high-level type of questions that were just, what are you looking for in a new chief? And I can't remember the other two, but they were high-level and try and give us a little bit of a pulse check on the department and the types of what we're looking for, as we do this. So I asked this afternoon, just asking Daryl and Shannon to lead us from the question standpoint. This is a position, even though it's commission appointed, that fire chief, that does report to Daryl, and I want to be sensitive to making sure that what he needs in that role is actually being addressed as well. So the questions where we normally have on the commission, they're definitely going to evolve. This will be more HR related and from Daryl's chair. Cool. Questions? All good? All right, so I'll send the survey out tonight. Last thing is consent agenda items. We have expenditures in the amount. I didn't see any emails, questions on those. Are we all good? Okay. And then the Indigent Defense Attorney Services contract. Are there any questions on that?
Just a comment. I just want to thank Dan publicly for all his work on that and working with our attorneys and Kentwood, Wyoming, Granville, and everybody trying to figure all the MIDC process out. But I think this is a good way to meet the standards, and we get reimbursed for that cost that the city has in this agreement or this contract. But it has to flow through the city as a pass-through. So thanks to Dan for working out the details. It's been vetted by Jeff Sluggett, and the judge is good with the revised version, so we should be good to go with that.
And I saw where we're, as we are with 59 districts court, splitting equitably the cost of said, so.
Right, and this is contingent upon Granville approving essentially the same agreement. So they're tie-barred to each other. They don't approve it, ours isn't valid, and vice versa. So,
All right, cross our
good
fingers,
partnership
folks.
we have.
All right, any other questions on that? All right, 6:57 and a half, so if anybody needs a quick coffee retop or anything else, you got time.
I didn't see it on my calendar, but I trust everyone else better than I trust myself.
You're going to sit down there?
No, I was gonna stand
Oh,
there.
do you want the clicker?
Dan?
You want the clicker?
No, I was trying to stand this way.
Hey, Dan. One eye.
Right. Correct.
And then.
Very good.
And is it? Public hearing, so we're doing this before the comment on the agenda items. Because I know we have people in
Yep.
the audience, so perfect. We'll stay in that order, so we're good.
Yep.
Thank you. That's at the end of the agenda. Closed sessions at the end.
You got 30 seconds. Just kidding. It's freezing in here. It's freezing in here.
I think it feels great. Outside.
Yeah.
Not on purpose, I need to change out of my Walker Trans shirt.
Exactly.
It's like a cavern.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, 7 o'clock, we'll call our city commission meeting to order, and I'd like to invite Commissioner Kent to deliver the invocation this evening.
Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing everyone to this meeting safely and for the beautiful day. Please protect our military, our police, fire departments, everyone serving and protecting others. We ask thee to guide this city commission and the decisions we make. We pray and give thanks as we are blessed to live in this great community. Lord, we ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. And I'd like to invite everyone to please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I could ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert. Present. Commissioner Kent,
Present.
Commissioner Deschate,
Present?
Commissioner Glanville,
Present.
Commissioner Gruters, and Commissioner Heisinger.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, the band's all back together. Good. All right. We have a need for approval of the minutes from the May 20th City Commission meeting. Look for motion on that.
Make motion?
Motion from Commissioner Gilbert.
I'll support.
Support
second
from
board.
Commissioner DeShane. So we have a motion from Commissioner Gilbert, support from Commissioner DeShane. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Approval is passed. So right now, we are holding a public hearing on the proposed 2019-2020 fiscal year budget. Before I open the public meeting, Dan, I'd like to invite you up if you would. I know you have a quick PowerPoint for our residents in the room with the finance highlights. So,
All right, thank you. That the right one? There we go. Okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity to share the budget with you. As the mayor said, I have a PowerPoint I'd like to go through as opposed to going through the actual budget document itself, which would go on and on and on, and people would not enjoy that very much, I'm sure. So first off, I'd like to thank multiple people who've been involved in this process. This just isn't Dan's budget. This is everybody's budget. We've got a lot of help from department heads, from commissioners, from all sorts of different people, and so I just kind of put it all together, but a lot of other people were involved in the process, so right off the bat, thank you to them for this. I'd like to try going through some of the terms that we use, not in any bad way, but just as a refresher or perhaps an update for certain people if they're not familiar with some of the terms that we tend to throw around quite a bit. So the first one there is a fund, and so a fund is used to track certain types of revenues and be sure that those revenues are spent correctly. So the example is you can't use money for that you receive for roads to be spent on a new fire truck or some piece of equipment. So a fund is like its own little company, and we have multiple of those here at Walker. Revenues are money coming in or income. Expenditures are expenses or money spent. Those are pretty straightforward. A department is a specific function performed by a governmental unit. So you have like the police department or the fire department or the finance department. It's a way to track costs for those specific activities. Fund balance, that's a term that gets talked about quite often. And basically, at its easiest level, it's the accumulation of revenues minus expenditures since the start of a fund, or like an accumulated profit, one might look at it, but it's the money that we have in reserves that we've accumulated over time. The budget is a document showing anticipated revenues and expenditures for the fiscal year, so that's what we're looking at tonight. And then we talk about a fiscal year, and really that's a 12-month time frame, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a calendar year. For Walker and all cities in Michigan, it's actually July 1 through June 30. That's dictated by the state, and so sometimes it gets a little confusing as to what year we're in because it's mid-year, but that's what we'll be looking at tonight. So why does the city of Walker prepare a budget? Well, a couple reasons. One is because our charter says we have to, and so we do it. It has to be done and approved by the beginning of the following fiscal year, or the year that you're going to have that budget be active. Also, the state of Michigan requires that we have a budget as well. The state requires that only certain funds, and again, we have multiple funds, have an approved budget, but most governmental units prepare budgets for every fund, which we have done. Once a budget is approved by the governing body, meaning the commission in this case, we can't spend more than what's listed on the budget without additional approval from the commission, and that's what we refer to as the budget amendment process, which we did a few months ago. The budget, just a general statement, the budget is both a plan for current spending revenues for the current year, as well as a tool to help plan for the future for expenditures and prioritize projects. So it's a good tool for us to use going forward. So what is the budget process? It actually takes several months to put this together. It starts in January. We send out requests to all the department heads. What kind of things do they want? What kind of needs do they have? Are staffing? Are there equipment issues? That type of thing. And then management meets with each department head, goes through their lists, and once that process is done, I kind of gather it all together and we put together a draft budget with Daryl and Frank's help. We are required then to have that draft budget to the clerk's office by February 15. So yeah, you're up here in this one, you go over to the left to the clerk, we give her the draft budget. That then gets shared with the finance committee of the city commission. So it goes down from the finance committee, and what they do is they have meetings with management and myself and with department heads if they want. And we go through the budget, we set priorities, look at potential changes, and we make some revisions as needed, and eventually we get to a point where the finance committee agrees that that is a good budget to present to the commission. We did 3 meetings this year at the finance committee level, and they all went very well, I thought, so that was great. So now, because they have a recommended budget, we're going to send it to you as the full commission tonight, and per state law, we have to have a public hearing on the proposed budget, so that's what we're doing right now. And hopefully it will get approved tonight. If not, we'll have to revisit it and come back because this has to be done before July 1. So, so that's kind of a long to do, but starts in January and ends in June, basically, is what the process is. So when we were preparing the budget, we had different things that we were using. One was the priorities established by the commission. For what you want to see the money used for and how it was used. We had a lot of open and honest communication between the department heads and the management, finance committee, and the commission. I think that's really good, strong communication we had. We have the expertise and experience of Walker staff and trusted consultants, and there's a lot of department heads with a lot of years of experience that make a lot of good decisions. So they're invaluable in that. Another item we used is this capital improvement plan, or you might have heard us call it CIP, which is basically a 5-year plan looking at our large capital expenditures such as vehicles and equipments, building maintenance. We set those all out kind of by department, or we have a section for parks, we have a section for vehicles, we have a section for buildings, ice and fitness center, that type of thing. It's kind of a fluid document, but we project out a few years with the understanding that if something's not going to work that year, we might push it another year back and move something else into its place and that type of thing. But at least we've got everything down, and we intend to update that every year. We also use the state of Michigan's website for revenue projections because we get money from the state. So the main two are state revenue sharing, which is a portion of the state sales tax, And then Act 51, which is highway revenue sharing, which is a portion of the state gas tax. And then other relevant information. So a fair amount of things go into putting that document together. So now, if we could, just kind of want to do an overview of the budget. Again, not getting into the nitty-gritty of all the details, but so basically on the budget, the principles that we use, we wanted to reflect the goals and priorities that the City Commission has identified. We want to continue to provide quality service and programs in the most efficient and cost-effective manner possible. And one thing we'd like to point out is that typically our revenue estimates are on the conservative side. They're not unrealistic, but we tend to round down a little bit when we're doing those. It's kind of been our budgeting practice over the years. Typically that serves us well towards the end of the year, as often we'll have some revenue sources that end up being a little bit higher, which helps. But we don't want to overestimate in that area going forward. Like if we had a really good year, with an income tax, we don't want to project up to that level again the next year because you just don't know. So we tend to go more with a conservative trend that way. On the revenues, we have a couple of main revenue sources. Our city property tax millage is going to remain at 1.33 mils. It's not changed since 2000. That is a very low millage rate if you compare it to any other local municipalities. I do know we have the income tax which supplements it, but again, that's still one of the lowest around, I believe. Walker income taxes continue to remain on a stable track, and just so you're aware, Walker is one of 24 communities in the state that has an income tax. So, and then the other monies we receive are from the state of Michigan for revenue sharing in Act 51, which we kind of touched on the last slide. So, on the expenditure side, kind of broad view again, we built in a 2.5% COLA. There's going to be the addition of 2 full-time police officers, one effective at the start of the fiscal year and one effective 3 months later. And then also the addition of a full-time Department of Public Works equipment operator effective in January, so 6 months of the year. We continue to honor our commitment to make additional payments towards our OPEB, other post-employee benefits, and pension long-term liabilities. So there's $300,000 built into that. That's on top of what the actuaries tell us we need to put in each year. We've got some HVAC upgrades to the public safety building and to other city buildings. The library building roof needs to be replaced. We put money in for future land acquisition. In terms of the Ice and Fitness Center, there's some money in there for equipment replacement, meaning fitness type equipment, treadmills, that type of thing. We've kind of built out a schedule and we're just following that along. And then they are in dire need of a new computer system, and so we've built that in. And we're just going to take everything out and start all over, which is what needs to happen. From the road perspective, we've budgeted $1 million in our road funds for overlays. So that's where you take a little bit off the top of the road and then you go back over and put the nice blacktop over it. So $1 million in for that. You'll see under there that $400,000 is for the major roads, the ones classified as major, and $600 for the local, which are more the subdivision type things. We also have multiple projects going on. We've got about $1.4 million assigned to different projects, road related, and I won't go through each one of those, but like the first 5 are actual projects that are in early stages or are almost done, but then the next 3 towards the bottom all say design, so we're getting a jump start on designing the engineering for those particular projects. And then the last one is a future signal for 3 Mile Remembrance. We know it's coming. I think we're a little not sure on the timing, if I remember quite right, but it's in there. So Continuing on, if we get to the vehicles and equipment, as I'm sure you all know, we own a lot of trucks and cars and stuff. So we've put in there replacement for about $2.1 million worth of replacements. So the first several are DPW related, compact loader and trucks, and sewer truck. We've been putting money away 2 years for that. A sidewalk plow for mainly for the Standale area, and that will be split between the general fund and the DDA fund for purchasing replacement of one of the big road trucks there. From the police perspective, we've been on this schedule of replacing 2 police cars or Tahoes at this point every year. So that's we've built 2 more in for this year. Police chief and the detective car as well. Along the bottom are the ones related to the fire department. We will be accepting a new fire truck here shortly, within the next month or 2, I'm assuming, $554,000. And we already have about $408,000 set aside for that, so that's a good thing. Then I think there's some question about what we're quite doing with Engine 3, but we left the money in there because something's got to happen. The SCUBA replacement, self-contained breathing apparatus, I believe that stands for. They want to replace that citywide. It's $550-some thousand. We've spread that over a 2-year window. And then on the bottom, we'd like to begin setting some money aside for a replacement of the platform truck. This year we have put $300,000 in there. Going forward, we hope to increase that, but that's what we could do in the current budget. So that's there. Just to kind of clarify on the set-asides, it's kind of a term we've gotten away from and we're trying to get back to it. It's kind of a savings, putting money to the side to help pay for future big ticket items, as you say. So in the current budget we're proposing, we're going to add $50,000 to the facilities sinking fund. So we'd have $450,000 in that set aside at this time next year. For OPEB, we are proposing $150,000 towards a set aside in the upcoming year. Again, we'll get to $450,000 in that. This would not be the OPEB trust fund that we've been putting money into. This would be a separate set aside that we would have a little more flexibility in using for OPEB purposes. The $300,000 for the fire truck, which we just had mentioned, and then also $50,000 for capital improvement set aside at WIFIC. That's geared more for the replacement of a Zamboni, roof replacement, that type of thing. And so we'll be up to about $260,000 at this time next year. From the bond payment perspective, things are looking extremely well. We're not adding any new debt this year. We're making our final payment on the city complex we're in right now. So that's 20 years down, and that's a good deal. So as it says in red, we won't have any debt for the general fund or major local streets as of May of next year. We do have some debt for the Walker DDA, or Downtown Development Authority. They're still paying on 2 bonds. One of them had to do with the improvements that were done at M45 and Wilson several years ago. That's got one more payment. That'll be done the same time as the City Hall. And then the other one is for Fire Station 2, which goes through May of 2023. And just so you're aware, the DDA bonds are paid through captured taxes by the DDA district, not by the general fund. So there's really no impact directly or no direct expense to the general fund for those bonds. And they capture plenty of money, enough to make those bond payments, so that won't be an issue. We also have a Riverbend water main bond. payable for a couple more years. That was when water main was put down in the River Bend area. That was a 15-year bond that's being paid back through assessments we charged all the property owners within that district. So that one is still on our books as well, but we're just down to a couple. If you remember, a few years ago, we had a few more. Now I'd like to focus just a little bit on the general fund, if we could. I won't go through every fund, but just the general fund is obviously our main one, so I wanted to focus a little bit on that. So as it says, it's our main fund of our city. The fund's purpose is to account for all activities that are not required to be in a different fund. So there are certain types of monies we get that have to be in its own fund. This is everything else, and it's the biggest, obviously the biggest fund of the city. Our main revenue sources are the income tax, as we mentioned, state revenue sharing, and property tax. So those percentages add up to 87%. So you can see that's where most of our income comes from. And then what I'd like to do, instead of, as I said, instead of going through all the whole budget document, I just wanted to try to go through it, the general fund via graphs, and hopefully that will kind of tell a story and help. But again, you can see, obviously, we are very heavily dependent on the income tax. Revenue sharing is down here, and then property tax over in this area. So that's kind of a breakdown. You'll see up here we're proposing a budget of $17.8 million from a revenues perspective. Then we'll do the same thing for the expenditures. You'll see that the police are in the middle here. Those are that's the most that we spend. That's about 28% of the budget. Fire is 13%, which is next to it, and then we've got some others. But if you go to the right, the OPEB and pension, that's what we were talking about earlier, trying to get that liability down, why we are in a good spot, and so that's what that is. Other city right next to it are things like our property and liability insurance and street light, electric use, gypsy moth suppression, that type of thing. We do have on the end here the capital projects, the capital outlay. Those are various projects we have lined up. That's in the Department 901 of the general fund, which I think is page 9 or 10 of your detailed document. And then finally, on the end, you'll see it says transfers out, and what that is basically we're taking money from the general fund to supplement different funds, mainly the road funds, to help pay for projects that we want to do. We don't get quite enough from the state to do those without some additional help. So that's what that is. So I forgot to show you on the top, you'll see that the budgeted expenditures are 19.1. So if we go to the next slide, it basically is showing you the difference between what we're projecting in revenue and what we're projecting in expenditures, and you'll see this little green wedge here that says 1.3 million. That's the difference that we're short on revenues, but we're allowed to use that fund balance that we talked about to balance out the budget. And so, with this budget, we're proposing to use 1.3 million of our fund balance to make it work. So we go, whoops. Now we get to this slide, which is really hard to try to understand and explain, but this is showing our fund balance. And there are different types of fund balance that the state has told us you're supposed to have. There are 5 different categories. The one we're looking at is what they call the unassigned or unreserved. It's not specifically designated to do a certain thing. We haven't set that money aside for something specific. This is what we run the city off of. That's the top number, the 5.7 million on the top. That's an audited number from our last audit. And then trying not to make all these numbers too terribly confusing, we're going to jump down just a few. You'll see right here a $1 million with a parentheses around it. That means a negative. That is what we're projecting we're going to use out of our fund balance in the fiscal year we're currently in right now that will end in a couple weeks. So if we take our unreserved fund balance on the top, subtract that million, we get down to this 5.4 million, which we would project as our unassigned fund balance in a couple weeks. Then that 1.3 million right below it would be the same number you just saw in the last graph, then that green wedge. That would be how much we would be taking out again the following year, and we then would get a projected fund balance a year from now of $4.1 million. Again, this is all budgeted, and reality might be a little different than what the budget ends up, especially because revenues often are a little bit different than what we projected, fortunately on the upside. But the point of this graph is if you take that projected unassigned fund balance and you divide it by the number below, which is the budgeted expenditures for the fiscal year we're proposing, you'll see we get a percentage of 21.5%. And what that's saying is that we have extra money available in case of some bad thing that happens. You want to have some reserve, and so we have, according to this, 21.5% of our expenditures, we'd be okay for a bit. Our fund balance policy that was adopted by the commission a few years ago requires that number be a minimum of 15%, so we're certainly above that. And then just to note that percentage, that 21.5, is after we've taken out all our set-asides and stuff. So this is really just unreserved. That's a good number. So if you have questions on this one, I will try to answer them, but this is accounting term confusion, if you will. So what I wanted to do also was compare fund balance over the last several years. So this is actual data from the last audits from 2011 to 2018. The red line on the top is our total fund balance, so that includes everything. Total fund balance has our set-asides are part of that. We have a cemetery trust account that's part of that. And so those items get subtracted off, and then we get this unassigned or unassigned fund balance. That's the blue line below. So you see the trend is that we've been doing pretty well. We've been hanging around the 30% on and off, as the trend goes. The question would then be, well, why are we down to 21% on the prior slide? And again, that's us from a budget perspective. When reality hits, we'll have a lot better idea here going forward. Our anticipation is that we'll do much better than the 21%, but we're thinking that might be a worst case scenario at this point. So that makes sense for the most part. Then I just wanted to quickly run through a couple of the other funds that the state requires that we have an approved budget. So we have our major street fund that accounts for Act 51 monies. Again, that's gas tax related money from the state of Michigan for major road activities, so plowing, repairs, projects, that type of thing. The next one is our local street fund, which is basically the same thing, only the money is designated to the local streets, so more of the subdivisions as opposed to the main roads throughout the city. Fund 206, that's our capital equipment fund. That's the fund that owns all of our vehicles and equipment. And then they charge the other funds a rental fee. And that's how they pay for so the rental fee pays for replacement, for oil changes, for the maintenance, all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about the MIDC fund through that contract a little later, but that's the grant monies that Darryl was referring to a little earlier, that we're now required to do some changes through the court system based on what the state has dictated, which is good. We have another fund, a special vice fund. We get some proceeds from drug forfeitures or drunk driving monies. Those are used for enhancements, mainly in the police and court area. We have the DDA or Walker Downtown Development Authority. That's the one that paid the couple bonds I was referring to. Have the Ice and Fitness Fund, or WIFIC, Walker Ice and Fitness Fund, that's the operations, tracking all the operations for that facility. And then we have another one called the Revolving Fund. We've had that forever. It was originally used to finance water and sewer improvements. So we'd go through an area, put the improvement in, we'd pay for it out of that fund, then we would assess the property owners, they'd pay us back, we'd kind of build the fund up and move down the street and do the next section. We don't do that kind of work that much anymore, so that fund is still there, but probably not for very long, so. All right, so then the resolution that's before you tonight is to do the official approval of the specific funds that the state requires that we do. As it says on the top, we have 24 different funds. You'll see we have to approve officially 7 of them, 7 or 8. But that's the total expenditures per the resolution is the $25.9 million. It's split out between those various funds that you see below. So that's what I had. Are there specific questions or clarifications? I'm happy to try to answer whatever.
On your graph, I look at police, DPW, then fire. DPW, we show some engineering, we show some sewer, but we don't show DPW. DPW is, the police is number 1 for spending, DPW is number 2, and it's not even shown, it's not on the graph.
Not on the graph.
And the Act 51 money keeps going up every year. So, is there a reason that DPW is not put in the graph?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and the reason is DPW is spread out among multiple departments and funds, so we don't really have we have a DPW department, but some of them work in parks, some of them work on the roads, some of them work in this building as custodial work, and so they get kind of, I hate to use the word buried, but they get put into specific departments as opposed to having one big DPW department that we can show specifically on a graph. So if I were to go back to this graph here, if you look, we've got this building and grounds, that's part of DPW. So they're in part of that. They are in the drains. When we do drain work, that's DPW. They're involved in the parks, so there's money in there. And then, the major and local street funds, which I didn't put in a graph form, that's a lot of DPW stuff as well. So they're a harder animal to be able to put on a graph very well.
Well, when I see over 3 million in our DPW, or in our streets, and I don't see it on the graph. It's kind of a.
That's
tough,
fair. That's a fair point.
So, and I'll just put it, every budget, we make amendments by the end of the year. And so, when you have a department, I voiced my concerns to the committee. You were there. I thank you for your work. I know everybody's got an opinion, but DPW had $1.6 million left, and we're putting another $1.3 million into that. I would prefer that money stay in the general fund with all the storms and different things and equipment and things that can go wrong that, if we did spend that on roads, you could amend it. But once it's in roads, it doesn't come back out.
That is correct.
And so I think, to be fair, I feel it would be better off left in the general fund and we amend the budget later. But that's my 2 cents, and thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Shane, anything? Commissioner Isaac? Mr. Groders, Commissioner Glanville, Commissioner Gilbert.
No.
Nothing. Couple quick things. Number one, thank you. The amount of detail is, and I think Dan, you bring up a very fair point about just how it's spread out, so understood, and knowing it's not that easy to do. But when I think about what Dan's put together, but then also the multiple conversations that we have with Daryl and Frank on the budgets and so forth, and what's I think nice from our chairs up here as the policymakers and the governing body for the city is we actually are told what we need to hear, not what we want to hear. So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much, appreciate it. When I look at these, just to sum this up, the I look at the priorities. I'm going to put the umbrella of public safety, understanding that they're, two departments with different nuances, different amounts of full-time employees and what have you. But I'll put that umbrella of public safety, and that just continues to be our top priority as a commission. And I think of what we're investing in roads and bridges and infrastructure. That's, Daryl, I can't remember a time sitting up here. We're definitely up there. This is about as high as we've invested, and that's definitely needed. The long-term debt thing is for the residents in the audience, this is something that we take very seriously in wanting to leave this in better shape for the people coming behind us. And we continue to there. And I think the investment in parks and green space, and I know we'll discuss that a little bit later on, but that's something investment too, is that it's something that the city has a reputation for, is evidenced in our logo of what our brand is, if you will. So thank you. Appreciate the help of the Finance Committee, the City Commission. And so at this point, we are now holding, Dan, we're all set then. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Make one comment?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify on some of the road projects that Dan had on his list. I think there's 5 or 6 of them that are on that list there that we received grants for funding for a majority of those projects. So some of the numbers you see here, like the Walker Avenue Bridge removal by Bissell right in the middle, we received almost $2 million grant to help assist with this project. So this $500,000 is just the city's match in addition to what we receive from the state and federal governments. Same with Sunset Hills overlay, Kinney Avenue improvements, 3-mile dual left project that's just about finished up, and the North Park Bridge upgrades. Those are all grant matches that are either probably around 20%. So we were able to leverage with our regional partners to take advantage of that. So a lot of that 1.4 million that you see that's additional above and beyond transferred into this account is really for grant match projects, the larger projects. Not all of it, but the majority of it is.
And I think on that point, we'd be remiss if we don't acknowledge the engineering department. I mean, how hard they've worked in getting that grant money brought in here.
And I guess just the other point is to reiterate what Dan said, the bonds are essentially paid off, which is really unheard of in any municipality around. And for instance, last year when we rebuilt Leonard Street, we paid cash for our portion of that project, where in years past we would have bonded that for 15 or 20 years at probably $100,000 to $200,000 a year payment. Yeah. So we were fortunate enough to receive some grant money, but we paid cash, so we don't have that ongoing on the books. So that, it may affect that bottom line fund balance a little bit, but in the long term, I think it's a very positive thing. So thank you.
Well done. Thank you. All right, so now I will open this. So we are now holding a public hearing on the proposed 2019-2020 fiscal year budget. Anyone wishing to speak on that subject and that subject alone should raise their hand or come forward and be recognized to speak. Anybody? If there are no public comments, the public hearing is now closed. There's no motion to close that, so we are at that. So next on our agenda then is public comment on agenda items. So I'll leave this. We have a lot of residents in the audience, so this would be the time. Recognize some faces out here. If you wish to speak on anything that happens to be on our agenda this evening, feel free to come forward. And if you would, as you folks come forward, just if one or all of you, if you'd like to, you're fine. Just if you'd state your name and address for the record, please, and then thank you, Dan. And
so, 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, I'm John McCracken from 4111 Imperial Drive. We were at a planning commission some months ago, and we had a lot more people here. And we understand that there's a strategic option to buy a particular parcel of property just down the end of Cummings. And we know a lot of you guys have been working hard for that. A lot of people have heard about this proposal, this strategic option to buy the property. And they feel it's very close, and it's reflected in our numbers tonight, I think. I apologize, my notes are not with me. My daughter locked me out of the house before I got here. Otherwise, I have those, and I could speak a little more intelligently with some notes. We'll see how this goes. But we just want to really thank you guys for working hard for us. When I was here some weeks back, there was a lot of mistrust. You guys have turned that around, and we just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And I get Cheryl Hellman, 509 Cummings. And just to agree with John and what he said, a couple of months ago, almost to the day, we were here frustrated, confused, a little bit angry, not sure about what was going on. And we really feel like our voices were heard. And we appreciate the time and effort that the commissioners and the mayor and everyone, manager, assistant manager, has put into this decision. And we just want to, we wanted to be here tonight to just express that to you and to thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Farney. Brian's back there. I'm at 451 Cummings. And we honestly left that meeting thinking that we were going to have to sell our house and move out of the community because we couldn't trust that we could stay here anymore. We've been here for 15 years. We've raised 3 children. And when we heard what the city was looking at doing a few weeks ago, I literally was in tears because I felt like I could finally be in my home and stay in my home, and eventually, you know, when my husband and I retired, then make that decision at that point to, you know, sell and retire and do what we wanted to do. So we thank you very, very much.
Thank you all. All right, anything else for public comment from those in the room? All right, thank you. So at this point, next on the list, we have our consent agenda. Covered this a little bit in our committee of the whole meeting at 6:30. Any questions on expenditures in the amount of $549,446.86, or any questions on the Indigent Defense Attorney Services contract? I think Dan covered it a little bit, and it's not the first time it's been on our radar up here, but any questions or dialogue on this? Being said, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Support?
I'll support.
So I have a motion from Commissioner Kent, support from Commissioner Deschênes. Any other discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Consent agenda is passed. Thank you. And then our resolutions. So we also covered at 6:30, Resolution 19-526 is the dissolution of the City Commission Police Fire Subcommittee. And for those that weren't in here at 6:30, purpose in doing that is we're doing some reorganization and I think more strategic alignment with some of our committees. The purpose in doing this, when we had a combined department that had police and fire in one, there was a need to have a police fire subcommittee. That is no longer needed, and that committee actually has not met for well over 3 years now. So, so we actually all entertain a motion to dissolve the City Commission Police Fire Subcommittee.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Commissioner Groders, support.
I'll support.
Support from Commissioner Glanville. Other discussion on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution 19-526 pass. Resolution 19-527, resolution to approve City of Walker fiscal year budget for 2019-2020. Any discussion on this before we go to a resolution to approve? Daryl?
Just would like to thank Dan for all his work on this budget this year and putting together a great presentation that I think summarized all the discussions we had. And also thanks to the commission and the finance committee for all the work. I think it was a smooth process, and I think we have a pretty solid budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Kent?
You know how I feel, and you know, it's, I look at liabilities and I look at different things different than other, and so just like, you know, the self-contained breathing apparatus, they're overdue for replacement. And when you're a fireman going into a burning structure, that's your lifeline, that tank on your back. And to me, that's a major liability not to replace them within their we're extending the life on them, and we shouldn't be doing that and on that equipment. And
I thought we were full replacing those, Dan. That's my
we
understanding from the
are,
fire department.
but
Yep.
it's a 2-year process, and it should have been started and should have been, I believe that when you do the math on, when we purchased them, when their life expectancy, it's now, and so I'm glad to see at least that's getting done. And like I say, you know, I'm a fire advocate, and that there's a bay at Station 3. It's been empty since April, or sometime in April, and it's still empty. And if you're on the second, third floor, you need to go out a window. It'd be much easier to a platform than it would be a ladder. And so that's to me, most fire trucks are replaced within 20 years, not 30 plus. And so, but I have my priorities and everybody else has theirs, so I'll agree to disagree, I hope.
So noted. Thank you. Appreciate you being an advocate for that as well. Commissioners, any other discussion on this?
I just have a quick one. Can you explain to me what I'm looking at with the Headley document that was included in our package? Yeah, the Headley Truth and Taxation. Dan, that might be a you question.
Sorry, refer that over to Dan.
We're not at our cap, right? We're not close.
We're not close. If you look at that one, there's the one with the graph with some handwritten numbers on it. The one says 1.336.
Yep.
That's what we're asking for in a millage. Next to that is a box that says 4.0 something or another. That's what we could go up to without having to ask for a vote from the.
So is this just annual documentation of where we're at in terms of the cap? Okay.
Yeah, correct.
I was trying to figure out the purpose of the inclusion. And
yeah.
That's why
No,
I
it's
asked.
it's part of the deal.
Yeah, I figured as much, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. We'll entertain a motion for approval of, get to my notes, Resolution 19-527 to approve the City of Walker fiscal year budget for 2019-2020.
I'll make that motion.
Motion for Commissioner Glanville. Do we
I'll
have support? Support Commissioner DeShane. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion pass. All right, next on the list is, this is our annual roll. Darrell, I don't know if you want to provide any additional insight, but our annual Certifying the Delinquent Special Assessment District to 2019 property tax roll.
Yep, these are ones that haven't paid their bills on time. It grants Dan the authority to place these on their property tax bills for summer. Yeah, so we will collect those. A lot of them just choose to pay their assessments that way, and we typically collect them all, I think. Yeah.
Through the property tax settlement system, we're guaranteed to get that money.
Okay. Yep. All right.
It's just a procedural thing, but yeah, we will get it. It'll be way after the fact, but we'll get it, so.
And for our newer commissioners, something we go through every year. So this is, we have two things we go through every year. This is one of them, what relates to this, so.
We do a similar thing for utility bills as well, for people that don't pay their water and sewer, although that doesn't come to the commission.
Correct.
Per se, but we do a similar thing if people haven't paid their water bills. It goes on to their, although it's administered through Grand Rapids and billed through Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
If they're delinquent, we get it paid through their property taxes.
Correct. Yep.
All right, commissioners, any questions, discussion on this? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 19-528.
I'll make a motion.
Motion for Commissioner Heisinger,
I'll support.
support for Commissioner Groders. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Resolution 19-528 is passed. Next on our list is Resolution 19-529, Financial Dealers Approved List. Looks like just some cleanup and update because some of those older banks are not even in business anymore.
Right, yeah, our last list includes several banks that have no longer exist due to mergers or that type of thing. So just an updated list.
And this is part of our overall investment strategy that we're making sure from a conservative and safety perspective that we're putting our funds in the right spots.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So these, most of them are banks we've dealt with, whether they're in their current form or a prior form. But yeah, this is just so that we have the approval to use these institutions to put city monies into. And they've, as I said in the memo, we keep a list with some bank ratings and that on it, and everything that we're proposing is higher on that list. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Commissioners, discussion or questions for Dan?
Dan, is this an annual update as well? Is this part of the?
It probably should be. We have not done it in multiple years. So yeah, it might be something we have to look at, again in a year. For example, Chemical Bank is merging with this TCF Bank.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding is that Chemical name will not be used. It will be the other one. Both of them are on our list, but maybe next year we have to come back and just take Chemical off because they no longer are there, that type of thing.
Is there a way we could set an annual review, but I mean, for the city commission to take action only when there is a change? That would make sense, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Maybe review it at budget time every year.
Yeah.
As we get to the first budget review.
That way we're just keeping eyes on it
Yeah.
without having to.
Yeah.
I think it's a good call out.
That's a great idea. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Good. Any other discussion or questions? I'll entertain a motion for approval then on Resolution 19-529.
I can make a motion.
Motion from Commissioner Gilbert.
Support.
Support from Commissioner Heisiga. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution 19-529 passed. Now we're on to ordinances. And first on our list is 19-649. First reading to modify signage regulations in the Standale Downtown Zoning District. Mr. Walsh.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and we're assisting Dan Power tonight by going through these ordinance amendments. And my understanding is all the amendments that you're going to see here tonight have gone through at least one review by your ordinance committee and then planning commission review as well. And I believe there were 7 ordinance amendments that were forwarded, and the only ones that made it through were the ones that you see here tonight. So Dan was nice enough to help me out and give me some context with this presentation, and I'm going to ask ordinance committee members and planning commission members if there's questions. They're really the experts on this. So I will do what I was tasked to do. The first zoning amendment comes through a variety of complaints we've received over the years about temporary signage in Standale. And ordinance committee and planning commission have decided to recommend some changes that would not allow banner or yard style temporary signs within your Standale Downtown District, which really is between Kinney and Wilson Avenue along Lake Michigan Drive. So it's kind of the heart of the Standale downtown area. So those temporary signs would not be allowed anymore. But sandwich board signs, you can see some of the graphics that Dan put in on the picture adjacent to McDonald's. You would be allowed to do sandwich board signs based on some standards and some operations. It sounds like a pretty reasonable thing. This is actually what we had in mind when we first wrote that Standale ordinance back from 07 to 09. But the ordinance worked out a different way, so we're actually kind of going back to what was originally intended, which was to make the signage in the downtown area look a little bit different, at least between M11 and Kinney Avenue. So the standards you see, I don't want to go through all of them. I'm more than willing to give you some historical perspective, and then for current comments on this, I would turn to the folks who are on the committee and the planning commission.
Commissioners, any questions on this changes? I do have one quick one. And I should have asked this before, my apologies. Up to the 1 or 2, depending on the size of the acreage and area, is that per business or per building?
That's a question that comes up with every multi-function site. Every strip mall has multiple businesses.
Right.
And one of the challenges we run into is if you say, per business, then each business gets a temporary sign, and then the yard gets completely filled up with temporary signs. So I'd like to hear what Steve's got to say about how we figured this one out.
And my why in asking this is has been one of our problem areas. It's actually been in compliance for some time now because we've been working with them. But I'm just curious because you do have a number of different businesses in there that could utilize that.
We set it based on lot size, and I think we set the lot size to 1 acre, and if you were over 1 acre, you could have 2 signs. If you were under 1 acre, you could only have 1. I think there was one lot that qualified for 2, and I think that was it. So
basically you could have here, so if I took here, without calling any specific businesses out, business A, if they have a sign out, business B, C, or D can't put a sign out
right,
there.
and that would be determined by the ownership of the building.
Okay. Commissioners, questions, discussion?
Then we can go on to topic 2. The second resolution you have tonight for first reading would be to change the minimum storage area in dwellings requirement. Right now, we have the standard that you see on the slide. The existing ordinance is 15% of the floor area of any dwelling unit is required for storage in a basement, attic, or other accessory structure. And that's proposed to carry through, but only for single-family and duplex buildings. So again, for a little bit of context, I'm going to turn to Steve to see what's the rationale behind this one.
I think that our logic here was that we had set kind of an unrealistic standard in the way that our larger multifamily dwelling units are set up. I think the intent of the ordinance was to limit folks who are, building in a way that they would have stuff all over their yards and kind of nowhere to put things. And that is what we're trying to address here with the one family and the duplexes. There was a discussion about the quadplexes, so those 4-unit homes. I think we have some in Alpine Estates. But that ended up, I think that for enforcement, it made more sense to follow through with the 1 and 2 family units. So that's the way we kind of came to that decision. And ultimately, it meets the goal of, I think, what the ordinance was initially intended to accomplish.
Commissioners, questions, discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. So as I'm reading this, does it say that multi-family dwellings will no longer be required to have any storage space?
It does not put them under the 15% of the living area standard. So that will be handled more on a case-by-case basis, I think, in the way that the floor plans are designed. But I don't think that we're going to go through and before we'll approve building permits and things like that. I think that's where the implementation comes in terms of enforcing that. Because a lot of times it'll be, I think, if I'm remembering this conversation correctly, I'm not looking at the minutes here, but I think the conversation was that sometimes your multifamily units will do like group storage and things like that, larger areas where you can put, multiple people's and they'll each have storage lockers, things like that. That implements differently in this language than the way that you would have the requirements in a single family or 2-family dwelling.
So just to clarify, those like an apartment building would be handled on a case-by-case basis. There's not going to be a designated amount of storage space.
Right.
But also with the multi-family units, a lot of them will put up garages and rent them, or you'll see the storage units company building right down the street that will, that want those folks' business. So, but a lot of, most of them, they want it to look appealing to bring people in and have people there, but also that they have, like I say, garages and different things you can rent. And to look at it, what you see out there now, but if there's a problem in the future, we'll be back. Somebody will be back looking at it. So.
Right, and the standard is set for storage areas that are enclosed, so you're talking garage, basement, or attic storage space. And that's a standard that we didn't think we could implement in these multifamily dwellings where, you have one level of apartment and things and there's no way to have a separate enclosed space for those units. or it's challenging to implement that on the scale that you're putting up these buildings. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I'm just concerned that, I mean, I appreciate people having storage company businesses, but I'm not sure that's the look we want in Walker, to have lines of storage. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like maybe there should be something. Maybe that's a separate ordinance.
It could be discussed as a separate conversation, I think.
Because
I think we would have to set that standard up differently than this.
Okay.
That's what I would say to that.
So I guess my concern or my question really is just that that is maybe addressed in some way. Just from a planning perspective, and, you know, if we're going to be doing more multifamily housing, I think when we look at that, you know, people want storage space.
And I'll circle back into the minutes from those meetings and get you a more thorough response to how we kind of got here.
Okay.
And we can have that conversation with Dan Power as well.
Okay, thank you.
And just to give you a little perspective, Carol, this is one particular part of your zoning code. So it's section 94-350, subsection 5. So ordinance committee decided to drill into this particular code. It doesn't mean that during site plan review, storage is not part of a plan that's brought in. If you look at your site plan review chapter, which is a different part of the zoning code, there are standards for parking, lighting, storage, safety. Those are all check the box items as plans come in. So like Steve was saying, a floor plan for a multi-use building, a multifamily building like this, whether it's a 3, 4, or more plex, they have to show on their footprint in their building floor plans a reasonable amount of storage for the number of units they have. So it's already in the code, just in a different spot. So this is, the devil's in the details in all these ordinance amendments. I always look at what particular code is being affected. And is there another spot in the code where this standard is in? And the answer is yes in this case.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Good question. Any other discussion, questions on that one? All right.
And then third, last but not least, if you recall, if you've been around for a while, you remember that we built our alternative energy ordinance back when the Cascade Engineering was coming out with smaller rooftop wind turbines. And Fred Meyer at that time put 6 on top of the corporate building for Meyer. And the mayor at that time, who was Robert Hewlin, this goes back quite a ways, said to staff, you need to build us an ordinance that's expandable as these new technologies come on board. So this would be chapter 2 of that code. It's taken a while to get to this point. But this would be the second column of your sustainability ordinance, for lack of a better term, that would deal with on-site solar energy systems, not commercial scale, but more for individual buildings, individual homes. And I would ask Steve to help us out in the details here, but I read through the list. There'd be accessory uses. You would still be required to get a building permit. And then everything else is kind of standard practice for smaller solar systems. And my understanding is when you look at the percentage of sunshine we get around here, you know, is this cost effective? But apparently the technology has caught up where UV light, which comes through even on cloudy days, can be captured and turned into energy. So the technology has advanced. So here we are adding chapter 2 to our sustainability code.
Commissioners, questions, discussion? I do like the consistency myself on the, this is not a short-term approve it and get it up there. This is monitored over time that, to make sure that it maintains its desired appearance, so. All right, so we have 3 ordinances, first reading in front of us then. Any discussion on any of the 3? We need to take these one by one. So any question on any of these 3 before we move for approval of them? All right, so let's jump into this. So first one is going to be ordinance 19-649. This is the first reading to modify signage regulations in the Standale Downtown Zoning District. I look for a motion and support to approve this.
I'll make a motion.
Motion from Commissioner Heisinger.
I'll support.
Support from Commissioner DeShane. Any other discussion on this one? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Ordinance 19-649 passed. We're on ordinance 19-650. This is the first reading to clarify the minimum devoted storage area for dwellings. I'll look for a motion to approve this.
I'll make that motion.
Motion for Commissioner Groder, support.
Support.
Support for Commissioner Gilbert. Any other discussion on this? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. Ordinance 19-650 passed. And for any of those wondering, no, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time if I'm writing. It was a joke. Next on the list, 19-651, first reading for defining and regulating on-site solar energy systems. Look for a motion and support on this one.
I'll make the motion.
Motion Commissioner Glanville, support.
Support.
Support for Commissioner Heisinger. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Ordinance 19-651 passed. Any other public comment at this point in time? Anybody? All right. So I'm going to make a motion at this point to go into closed session to discuss acquisition of real property and to potentially act on closed session discussion. So I'll move that the City Commission, we need a motion that the City Commission go into closed session as permitted under Section 8D of the Open Meetings Act to consider the purchase of real property in the city. If the clerk would call the roll, please.
Mayor Carey?
Yes?
Commissioner Gilbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Kent?
Yes.
Commissioner DeShane?
Yes.
Commissioner Glanville?
Yes.
Commissioner Gruders?
Yes.
And Commissioner Heisinger?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioners, we'll adjourn to the meeting room. All right, then the fun stuff. So thanks again. You're welcome to stay. We're on the home stretch here. Commissioner and city manager comments. I'll start to the right this evening to our clerk.
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gilbert.
Had a really exciting meeting, I believe, last week, where we unveiled the Laker line. That was a pretty exciting day for the folks at the Rapid. A lot of work has gone into that, and I think it's a really exciting prospect for us and the impacts it'll have on the Standale area. So we're looking forward to those buses starting to run up and down August 2020, and I'm sure you'll start seeing our new bus out and about in the community.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Glanville.
I was also at the Laker line, and it was very exciting. Yeah, it was great. Fun to be there and fun to see, what that's going to look like. And I was really pleased with, how the whole thing's going to operate. So that's a good move. I was also at the legislative breakfast. I think that was a fantastic opportunity for people to get a feel for what's going on, and I hope we continue to do those a little bit more. And then I was working, Melanie and I had a couple of things we did together, and I'm really grateful for her connection to the home repair services. So we went down and took a tour of the services there. And as many of you know, I've been working with some of our lower income residents. And so just looking at programs that might be shared to us here in Walker so they don't have to go quite as far, and how we might engage some of our own organizations in supporting our community so that we have some of that, some of those services here. So that was good. And then just a couple of perhaps history notes today. As you may or may not be aware, June 10th is a special day here in the state of Michigan. It marks the 100th anniversary of Michigan's ratification of the 19th Amendment, which of course was women's suffrage. So we were actually one of the first states in that 3 states ratified on June 10th in 1919, and that was Wisconsin, Michigan, and Illinois. So we were one of the first states to do that, and if we fast forward 100 years, it is my pleasure to serve on historically the first female majority commission in Walker, which consisted of myself, Roxanne DeShane, Melanie Gruders, and Sandra Holland. And of course, we have continued that tradition with Elena Heisinger, so welcome to the caucus. And I think that's really special. Also, in the third ward appointment that we just did, it was nice to see 3 female finalists in that discussion. So I know that over time, Walker kind of has a reputation of being somewhat traditional and conservative. But at the same time, I think we've really created an environment that allows all of our citizens to flourish, and it's a pleasure to serve the community. So thanks for that, and yay, Michigan. Just to follow up that note, I just want to talk a little bit about the events of this weekend that took place, in the community park. And I think, as Mayor Carey said, what happened is not representative of our city. And I hope that we can continue to demonstrate the same kind of support for our residents in that situation as we have historically in this area. So with that, I will pass it on.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Landville, for your kind words. Just a couple of things. I was at the Rapid Line as well, and one thing that I learned was if once they're in session, or once they're in use, the buses actually have 3 doors. And so, people say, oh, this is going to be worse than ever on M45 or whatever. But so the doors will actually expedite, entering and exiting. And then all the lights are timed as well. So they told us, if you want to make good speed, just follow one of the buses. So, we'll see how that works.
And they are wider doors too.
Oh,
That's
good.
another little fun fact.
Yeah, yes. Tomorrow night, we have a little ribbon cutting for the Standale Reformed Church Community Garden Project, which I think is going to be awesome. Then it's 6:30, is it? The fire
Yes.
station, at the fire station,
5
the
and 6:30,
update with law enforcement and the mayor. And Thursday night, most importantly, is our first summer concert in the park, and I will be there, and I hope you will be too.
Awesome. Good, thank you. Commissioner Heisinger?
I went to my first community engagement meeting last week, Monday, and we discussed the different approach that we're going to have for that committee, as well as different ways that we can reach the citizens other than through social media. So we are brainstorming ideas. So any of you guys have ideas, feel free to reach out to me. We're looking for different ideas on how to connect with the citizens in different ways. And then we had a ZBA meeting last week too, and that passed. The deck did.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShane?
Yeah, I have a couple things. I just want to tell you, Mayor Carey, that I really enjoy your new blog, Minute with the Mayor. It's a great way to communicate with the residents, and it's so personalized. I think that's really cool. I think it's a very effective way to keep our citizens and residents informed. So, good idea. I also attended the Employee Appreciation Luncheon this week. The food was fantastic. I didn't know I could eat that much, but I did. And I just thought it was really fun. Even waiting in line was kind of a good time. There was a lot of fun camaraderie with the city staff, and it's a great event, and I know that they really appeared to really enjoy themselves, and I know I did. And then we had an incident, I think, over the weekend near Zenzer School, Leonard and Kenny, where there was a whole bunch of mailboxes that looked like they were pretty battered and taken down. Do we have any updates on that? Did you hear about that?
I haven't heard, but I can find out for you.
Can you? I know that they had some issues over the winter, I think, with some snow plowing, but I think this was just a random act of violence with, like, what did you call it, Carol? Baseball?
Mailbox baseball.
That's right. So that's what we think it was.
School's out, so.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, I just was wondering. And then I just had a question. Do we have an update on how paid on call fire department, are we seeing any activity filling those spots?
I'm not sure. That's a good question for interview question, but I know we have signs out, we have ads out, so we
Okay.
accept, applications year round for those positions.
That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Kent?
No comment.
What?
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
But it won't be very.
3 quick comments for you. On Wednesday night, Your Community Development Department will present to the Kennewa Hills Public Schools Master Plan Committee, Strategic Plan Committee. We've done this every few years. So that will be at 7 o'clock at their middle school in their large group instruction room. The school districts all want to know population growth and taxable value increase. So we have a presentation that we put together. The presentation is going to be given by Dan Power and Andrea Hendrick. And as the old guy in the group, I'm going to give the introduction and provide institutional knowledge, but I want those folks to get out there and interact more with the community. So that I will, if you're interested, I will send out the presentation tomorrow in PDF. It includes some population numbers for projects and then taxable value stuff. Item number 2 is on June 19th at English Hills Banquet Center in the English Hills Golf Course area. We will hold our Alpine Avenue 2040 Master Plan meeting. That will be from 5 to 7 o'clock, and then the Planning Commission will meet immediately after to discuss the results of the public outreach. We met as a group and did a tour of the Alpine Avenue corridor, and what we're going to try and do there, folks, is that corridor is, I don't have to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's pretty significant to the city of Walker, and it's probably going to change quite a bit in the next 20 years. Commerce is changing, transportation is changing, so our master plan reaches out to 2040. So this will be the first step to gain public input from people in that area of town, both North and South Alpine Avenue, and start to see where change will happen and where we can maybe have some opportunities to do positive change. So that will be on June 19th at 5 to 7. And then last but not least, our third attempt at a Porta-John in West Chesterfield Park failed. More arson, that's 3 in a row. So we made the case that, and that was the, I know, previous commissioner whose name I already forgot. How about that?
Holland.
Sandra Holland. That was her big thing down there. But it's just not going to work out. So that's 3 fails, and we're just going to stop doing that down there.
Because there gets to be a point where we're not able to rent anymore from that partner, and because we've had 3 become toast at this point. It's
I don't
tough.
know what's going on down there, but it's an arson target for whatever reason. So, but other than that, I hope to see you at the master plan meeting on the 19th. Thank you.
All right, have a couple items. Just to FYI, I think with, Scott Funk being appointed to the Planning Commission, that'll create a vacancy on the ZBA, which will give us an opportunity, I think, to really roll out that process sooner rather than later that you talked about earlier. So I think it'll give us a good opportunity to kick that into gear. Just a couple updates. I did send you an email that the gypsy moth spraying was completed last week. Our consultant will be back in a couple weeks to do a post-spray evaluation. If you get any comments from residents, let me know, or if there's concerns, but we will do an evaluation to see how effective it was, and then he'll come back in the fall and do a survey again to see how, really at that point, what he would recommend for next year. Again, this is our 3rd year doing those pre and post surveys, and we're making pretty good progress according to Neil Swanson, who's our consultant on that. Again, as Roxanne said, thank you for lunch for the employees. It was well appreciated. Thanks to the commissioners that were able to attend. It was good food, good camaraderie, and we had no complaints for once from anybody. So it was all good, and I think all the employees had an awesome time, and it was great. Just a reminder, Bob Walker's retirement coffee is scheduled for June 26th here at the Commission Chambers. I think you all received an appointment for that, but just as a reminder for that. And last but not least, starting tomorrow, we're going to be doing some work out front here on the main driveway in the middle, right where you come into the library. So that's going to be closed for the remainder of the week. We're going to be replacing the concrete between the curb and the sidewalk and that driveway only. So you'll have to use the staff driveway here on the south end of the building. So we will have it signed. They might even be out there tonight. But if not, first thing in the morning, that'll be signed. So we're pouring new concrete pad in that driveway. That's where the broken up asphalt is. We'll have it posted on our social media sites as well. And last thing is that tomorrow also is a community watch meeting up at Station 3. So if you're not down in the 3rd ward, you can be up in the 1st ward at the community watch meeting. And I know Greg's putting on a presentation, and I think he's going to have somebody there as a theft identity or cyber crimes, somebody speaking on, I forget what the topic is, one of that. But I believe that's at 6:30 as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll roll through mine real quick. To-dos before I leave tonight, I will make sure to send that fire survey out and share that with the commission. And then, Jared, do we have anybody for July for the work session for department or no?
No, because I wasn't sure if we were going to have that meeting or not. We talked about not doing a July work session. So. And August we didn't have, and then we have Sarah, I think, for September slotted.
So we have July, August. I do want to get, especially for the newer commissioners, for those that have not been in there, it's quite an experience to understand what the capacity, the capabilities are, and what the future needs are going to be there for dispatch. So I'd like to take advantage. We could do a regular Monday night or a work session. Is there a preference from the group? The majority is going to roll on this because I know it might not be a perfect response for availability.
I'm sorry, can you?
So could we,
state the
do you want to
question
do
again?
July or August for that third Monday of the month? Do you want to try and do it then, or do you want to do it on a commission night at 5?
To go to dispatch.
To go to dispatch.
Can we do a work session?
Okay, so I hear a work session. Any support or dialogue around that?
If we do a work session, would it would still probably be that 5 o'clock
I could
slot because
bump
the
it maybe to
dispatch folks-
5:30 to
When are they there?
24/7.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Sorry.
If we could edit the tape, we'd edit that.
Yeah, that's right. I'm indifferent to either. I'll make either
Okay.
whenever works.
So maybe a 5:30 potentially.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess it doesn't matter, just if it's a little later than
Okay,
5.
I'll see what we can get. Is that all right with the group for July, maybe a July, and see what their availability is? You and I have been in there before, so I know.
Well, I just think the time to get there, you might want to start at 3 if you're going to have it.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm kind of thinking. Yep.
Maybe a note to budget time according to travel conditions.
Yes, so here's what I'm going to do. I will communicate with the group. I'll try and arrange the July, August. I'll send that email before I leave tonight to the sheriff and to Matt to reschedule, so. Census Count Committee, so I'll try and breeze through the things. I attended 2 weeks ago, since our last meeting, a Census Count Committee, and I think it's only more for information only. The mayors are meeting as part of a larger group that Grand Rapids organized. The herd's starting to move there with some of the actions. You're starting to see some of the advertising for postings and so forth. Look for more to come with that. We at this point are going to use Kendra at some point in time, I believe, as a resource for that as well, to help coordinate efforts. So more to come on that one, but that's really significant from a budget count perspective. That is per employee. I think the feds said it's about $1,800 per year, and you figure the census is every 10 years, so every person that's counted is $18,000. That over the 10 years is back into the city. So this is pretty significant to make sure we capture everybody. And I think there's two concerns with it, not to get too far into the weeds, but one is complacency with people that think they don't matter and they're not really caring if they get counted or not. And then the second one is any hesitancy around some of the some of the potential posturing with immigrant status and what have you. So more to come on that. Was it last Friday, Daryl, or 2 Fridays ago? We were invited to the police department retiree breakfast, and it's great to see the familiar faces there, and we had a couple dozen of the folks there, and my hope is the other departments start to pick up on that a little bit, and it's humbling to see the years of service that I can say guys, because it was all guys in the room, that they've put in, and the others as well. But it was nice, and maintain that relationship with the city is still after all these years is incredible. One thing you did not mention, I'll throw out there is we did the June 1st, the live fire department training, and our chief had invited and 2 to go along. And Dan was talking earlier about during the budget things, that I think of all the police ride-alongs, some of the unique situations at nights, even going out to duty station, the fire department Sunday mornings, or riding with a snowplow in the middle of whiteout conditions. This is probably by far the most intense opportunity. So my hope, and I shared that with the others, that opportunity will be afforded to others as time goes by. But it is really intense. But one of the things I picked up was our new SCBA tanks, and they come as a kit. Right now, the melt point on the mask where the respirator comes in is 500 degrees, and our new ones will have an 800 degree. So these little things that we're doing the homework on, the department's doing and recommendation, with that, I just feel like we're getting a lot better equipment as time goes on here. Covered the Laker line, all that. Right in the home stretch, senior neighbors, Julie Zalewski and I met last Wednesday with the senior neighbors up at Fire Station 2. One of the challenges they have as they continue to grow is needing more of Station 2. I've really, on behalf of the city, we've taken a position that our fire department specifically has more need for training in that area, and as we add, our police officers use that lower level at times. Life does as well as a station for the south end of town when they've got the ambulances out there. So we're working with less room for them, but so there's kind of this conflicting world. They're looking for more room, but yet there's not the space available at the station. So the main level now, where they had some storage down there, is moved upstairs. So fire has the entire main level, and that way, that's theirs. It's a secure area. They have it for training. And again, on behalf of the city, we felt that was the highest priority because it is our city fire station. So that was one. We did make a trip over to Station 3, which is a potential down the road. There's some work, senior neighbors, we sent them away with a checklist of things that they need to do on their end, that they could potentially move that over to Station 3. Part of their challenge right now is having to break down tables and chairs and set them back up for their stuff. And I truly, if I empathize and understand what it takes to do that, but it is a group that we want to be very welcoming and inviting to our seniors. But fire does need that for more and more as their needs continue to grow. So Station 2 is probably going to evolve more and more to that dedicated fire station, public safety building, and seniors may be at another station at that point. So more to come on that. I just want everybody to know if you have any interaction with them that you're aware of it. Employee luncheon was awesome. I think thanking Shannon because she really thought hard on this one, and then Julie Zalewski behind the scenes just making sure everything was set up back there was incredible. So last thing I'll leave you with, I want to give Kendra credit on the minute with the mayor. We had time. We were on Fox 17 the morning of the Laker line ribbon cutting, and then we ran down to the ribbon cutting. We stopped for a quick cup of coffee, and we were going over kind of a punch list of items, and this was on hers as something that she's wanted to do, was have a video blog. And for my day business, our CEO does it on a fairly frequent basis. It's a great transparency and communication tool. So I drank the Kool-Aid that she poured into the coffee cup, and we tried the first one, so hopefully they'll get better over time, and maybe we'll have guest appearances and all of that. So if there's anything you want to emphasize or like me to share, let me know in advance. We'll probably do them 2 to 3 times a month, probably a little bit irregular on the schedule, just as we get information, be able to share updates, I think, at that point. So that is all I have. Anything else? Well, God bless you. Anything else from the group before we adjourn? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn then.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, Commissioner Glanville.